Go for it.
Today is November 16th, 2017. We are at Da Vinci Charter Academy. I am Bailey Robinson Burmester, and I am here with Kate Sangster, Grace Nielsen, Andy Knox, Samarpreet Kandola, Nate Bittners, Nicholas Chokien, Samantha Sheridan, and Jackson Turning. We are interviewing Luis Acevedo, born January 1971, veteran of the Iraq War. So let's begin. Which conflict did you serve in?
Well, my first official conflict was obviously when we first went after September 11 attacks. We deployed to the island of Diego Garcia, which is in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and we started the Afghanistan war. That's Enduring Freedom. Started Enduring Freedom then, and then we did that for a couple of years, and then we rolled pretty much into the second Iraq War in the spring of 2003.
Okay.
And then from then on, all the conflicts all the way up to 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What branch of service did you serve in?
I served in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm. And what was your rank?
When I retired, I was a master sergeant.
Okay.
And so what were the kind of jobs that you would have in the Air Force?
When I joined the Air Force, I always wanted to fly, but when I went to the recruiter and told him, hey, I wanna be on an airplane, he said, well, right now there's nothing open for you. So what I did is I took a job as a nuclear missile electronic maintenance technician, and I was stationed on Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. So what I did is I worked with top secret components from the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile, and I did that for 3 years before I got the opportunity to what we call cross-train into flying on the KC-135 refueling aircraft.
Interesting. So where did you serve? What places?
The first one was Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, near the city of Minot. And then the second one here at Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield, California.
So were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at that time when you enlisted?
I'm from Puerto Rico, so I enlisted in the city of San Juan.
Why exactly did you join?
Why did I join? I always wanted to be in the Air Force. I always wanted to fly. Growing up in the island, there were two major naval air stations nearby, and every time when I was your age, every time during the summer they will have exercises, and my house was directly on the path of one of the training routes, and I used to see all the F-14 Tomcats, A-6s, and all those jets flying really low over my house, and I told my dad, one day I'm going to be flying with those guys.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Oh, my first day was in basic training.
Yeah.
So it's a life-changing experience. Back then it was a little bit different than it is now. Everybody has a different times and different ways to how can I say it? Training was different than it is now in terms of I'm gonna say it was harder to get into it. It was harder in basic training. We were trained a different way than the new trainees are trained now. But it was overall a good experience.
Do you remember your instructors?
Oh. My first my MTIs were Senior Airman Snoddy and Tech Sergeant Guevara.
So how did you make it through? How did you get through it?
Oh, with the help of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You rely on all your teammates or your fellow airmen to go through the training.
So what can you tell us a little more about your boot camp and training experiences?
Boot camp for the Air Force is in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much what happens is when you join, the the day before you start your training, you go into a military entry processing station, and then you either spend the night there, and then you go to the airport, they give you all your papers, and then you travel to San Antonio, and then from there, the MTIs will pick you at the airport, and they put you in a bus, and once you get to the base, everything starts. Pretty much, it's like a shock, surprise, type of environment where they're yelling at you, telling you to do things, in a really fast pace, and you will not sleep for. Let me see how long before we went to bed. It's pretty good, 12 hours, and we were flying pretty much the travel the entire day. So it was a pretty hard first day, and then wake up the next morning at 5 in the morning, and it's just like on and on and on. We were like that for 6 weeks.
And how is the Air Force different from other branches in the training?
I don't know too much about the basic training from the Army or any of the other branches, but obviously the Air Force back then, the military aspects on how to address somebody, or how to learn rank and talk to people, it's all the same. Now the Air Force, because it's the Air Force, has they do their training based on what the guys are going to be doing in the field. When I say the field, it could be flight line, working in a hospital, or a missile site, different things. Army tailors their training towards their combat, field combat, needs. The Air Force is a little bit different. Same for the Navy. Navy is more like sea warfare and stuff like that. Coast Guard, same way. In the Marines, obviously, similar to the Army, but with a little difference.
What was the hardest part about training?
For basic training?
Yes.
Oh, it's being away from the family. We didn't have what you guys have right now. We didn't have any social media. There's no cell phones. That break, getting away from your comfort zones. The food was different. We only had maybe one phone call a week, and then we had to write letters to our loved ones, and then they will get mail from them, and you may get a letter once every 3 or 4 days. That's all, and then that's why you rely so much in your fellow trainees to get through the training.
Mm-hmm. So how long was it before you'd see them again when you first went off?
To see my family?
Yeah.
It was 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
About 4 months before I got to fly back home and see my family.
So when did you enter into Iraq?
Okay, so after the initial Afghanistan push in 2001, we went into Iraq, like I said, in the spring of 2003 for the initial night. I don't know if you guys seen footage on TV of what was called a shock and awe, where there was bombs falling and they were exploding one next to the other. I flew that night. I hit the bombers on their way back to Barksdale Air Force Base. And then after that, it was every night, pretty much. I was a night flyer, so I flew most nights from our base in the Middle East through Kuwait into Iraq, and then we did combat operations in there.
And so that night that you mentioned with that bombing, can you give us a little bit of context about that? Well,
not to talk too much about the details of the mission, but the bombers took off from the United States, and then we were scheduled to refuel them at a track off of Iraq heading east. Pretty much we were scheduled to meet them at a certain point at a certain time. And we were there and they were there, and then we met up, we gave them gas, and then they flew back home from there, and then we flew back to our base.
Okay, so do you have any vivid memories of arriving and what it was like?
Arriving, well, I didn't flying over Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since I flew mostly at night. After that, a lot of these cities were blacked out. So if we didn't have any like full moon or anything, you can barely see the ground. I mean, you can see some fires and stuff, but during springtime in the Middle East, there's a lot of storms. It actually rains there. So we spent a lot of time trying to go around storms and throughout the time that we were flying over there. There was a lot of traffic, air traffic, U.S. air traffic, and we were controlled by an AWACS, so we moved around the country. Other than the actual populated areas, there's not much around there. There's hardly anything to see. During the day, the few times that I flew over Iraq during the day, it's just it's not densely populated. It's very scarce. You see maybe a compound here and a compound there, but that's about it. Other than the bigger cities like I forget the name of it, the one that we used to fly over it all the time. We went all the way up to Kirkuk a couple of times, and some other ones. We were all over the place.
What were your main jobs and assignments that you had to do there?
As a KC-10, at that point I was flying in the KC-10 as a KC-10 in-flight refueling operator. My job was to control the air refuelings when we were up there, and then make connections with the other airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys familiar with the KC-10 at all?
No.
You are? Yeah. To explain it a little bit, the KC-10 is a 3-engine DC-10, commercial DC-10 converted into a military aircraft, which has 2 air refueling systems. It has the boom and the hose and drogue. So that way we can refuel Navy aircraft, NATO, and friendly forces, as well as U.S. aircraft. Most of the Air Force assets are refueled by using the boom, which is a structure behind the airplane that has wings in it. It drops down, and then we fly it and control it from the back of the airplane.
So that must have been a pretty high pressure job, right?
Yeah, it is. It is, but you get used to it. It's kind of like when I talk to people, they're amazed by what we do and the circumstances and the situations that we see ourselves in, or we saw ourselves in. It's like learning how to ride a bike. Once you got it, you got it. Obviously, situations are different and you adapt to them. But once you learn the systems and know how to operate them, it's fairly simple.
So while you were in Iraq, did you see direct combat?
Yes, I was, well, air combat. Because our role was to provide fuel for the close air support for the ground troops. So the way it works is that when you have, let's say you have a platoon on the ground, right? And then when they request an air asset to go help them, like any kind of asset, like A-10s, any kind of fighter attack aircraft, to go help them out. Those assets are flying already nearby, but obviously they need gas. So we will be kind of like the mothership, and it's like the chicken and chicks. We used to call it that way. So when we say chicks in tow, it's like we're here, and then we got a bunch of fighter airplanes around us, and they're refueling off of us, waiting to assist the ground troops if they need to. And then also if there were like air-to-air assets, like let's say the Iraqi had a jet trying to break our cover or kind of like intercept us, then our assets will go and do fight with them. But that didn't happen because they didn't have the assets to do that.
So you did all this refueling while in the air?
Yeah.
Were there a lot of casualties in your unit?
Nope.
Great.
Luckily.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you meet any Iraqi civilians?
No. Our planes were based out of the UAE. We didn't land in Iraq.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So did anything ever go wrong while you were refueling an aircraft?
Oh yeah. There's a couple of situations where the receiver aircraft was having issues, maintenance issues, like any system malfunctions, and they needed us to be with them. So we had to do whatever it took to get them gas for them to go back to the base, because otherwise the pilot will have to eject. There's a few situations like that. Over Afghanistan, we flew in certain situations we flew below what we are normally allowed to per our regulations, just to get assets on target, bombs on target at night and in rough weather.
So tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
During that those particular deployments, let's see. One of the most memorable ones was when I remember one evening we were to meet up with an attack squadron from one of the aircraft carriers. And I don't remember the name of the aircraft carrier, but the aircraft carrier was off the coast of Bahrain. So we flew to the carrier, and we picked up what was that? 8 fighters, and then there was another KC-135 from a different base that joined us while we were picking up these fighters. And then that particular evening was super stormy in Iraq, and then they picked up another set of fighters. So there was and then their weather radar broke, and the fighters were relying on the 135's weather radar. So we were in a cell. When we say a cell, it's like a refueling airplane with a bunch of fighters around them, and we move across the airspace in 2,000 feet blocks. So it'll be like let's say 1,000 feet, like 4,000 feet here. We were at 3,000 feet, and the bottom of the block will be 2,000 feet, for example, right? So that bunch of airplanes move like this, like a block of air moving. so that way no other airplanes can go through. It's very complicated, but so we were flying over Kuwait, going into Iraq, and at one point there was like 18 airplanes, and next thing I see, we were leading the whole formation of 18, and I remember seeing all those airplanes bouncing up and down because the thunderstorm was so tall and it was so big that it took a lot of effort for us to stay somewhat together. And then it was really hard to get fuel to the fighters through that storm. So we survived it, but yeah, I will never forget that one, amongst other ones, that other situations that I've been into that were not related to the Iraqi war.
What were the living conditions like, both just in your base and in general?
My base was fine. We were at that time, we were living in tents, but it wasn't like we had everything that we needed. The Air Force bases are built in a specific way, and most of the services were there. So living conditions were fine, given the situation, right? We weren't like the Marines or the Army troops down on the ground in Iraq that were like out in the open. I had my cot, I had showers and stuff like that because we were in an air base in a different country, so we flew from there to Iraq.
You mentioned that you had wanted that flying was your dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you enjoy flying in the military?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I enjoyed it all the way to my retirement.
Mm-hmm. What would you say were the best parts of serving?
The people.
Mm-hmm.
The people, and then second, by the places I visited. I worked with some of the most professional and selfless people that I ever met. And the places, I went about 40 countries, all being stationed here in the West Coast. Our primary area of operations is the Pacific, so Hawaii, Japan, the Koreas, Thailand, all the Pacific friendly countries that the U.S. normally have relations with, we used to go.
Mm-hmm. So were there times where you had difficulties getting along with people, or was it generally pretty smooth?
I mean, like any other job, not everybody's good, but not me. I normally try to find ways to get along with everybody. Whether we have differences in ways of thinking and ways to do things, I just normally try to figure out a way so we can meet in the middle somewhere.
Did you make any lasting connections?
Oh yeah, I have many friends. Most recently, I got one of my good friends from when I was a missile guy up in Minot. I haven't seen him for over 20 years, and I went to an air show in Arizona, and we got together, and it was like nothing happened. Like I saw him the day before. So it is like that for most of the military folks. If you have a battle buddy, like the Army says, another airman that flew with you, another crew member that flew with you for many years and many years ago, that person is going to be there, and it's going to be the same. You guys are going to be talking about the same things, and they're going to treat each other by the same way.
What were the worst parts and the hardest parts of serving?
The hardest parts of serving, especially being a flight crew member that is constantly gone, because I did not, I flew in, I've deployed. When I say deployed, we went out for more than 30 days for the wars and contingency operations. It was being gone from the family. I don't know if you guys know Diego, but Diego was born at Travis, obviously you do, and they got used to me being constantly flying back and forth. I'll say, hey, I'm going on a trip tomorrow, I'll see you when I get back. The reason I say I see you when I get back is because I never had a solid day to come back home. It could be, I'm scheduled to be back in 2 days, but next thing something happens, I'll be back 2 weeks later. And that happened quite often.
So how long were you usually out before seeing your family again when you were serving?
It varied quite a bit because, like I said, sometimes you went out on a mission that was supposed to be 2 days, and then during that mission you get picked up to go on another mission that is 2 weeks long, or you are in a mission somewhere and then the airplane breaks and you have to wait for a part or something that delays your time coming home.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I did. On the paper that I put there, I ended up at the time of my retirement, I had 3 meritorious service medals for the Air Force. I had 4 air medals, 4 aerial achievement medals, 3 Air Force commendation medals, and I got a bunch of other medals that are I just don't remember because I got so many. Yeah. At one point, my ribbons rack was up to here, so I kind of stopped, learning.
Yeah. So, how did you get them? What were they related to?
I'm sorry.
So your awards, what were they related to?
The meritorious service medals are related to what happens is in a period of time. Let's say you served for 3 years at this particular assignment, and then whatever you did during that period of time gets compiled, and then it highlights what your accomplishments. It highlights what you worked with, and kind of puts it together in a citation, and then it becomes a medal. That's how they are. The commendations and the Air Force commendation medals and the meritorious service medals are time frame based. Or you could get any of those 2 for a single event, but it has to be something really significant. Mostly it's a compilation of things that you've done in a period of time.
Were you ever in a situation where your aircraft was in danger of going down?
Yes, not from enemy fire though. The nature, air refueling by nature it's dangerous. You're flying 2 airplanes pretty close together at 500 miles an hour, day, night, in any kind of weather, right? So there was, I remember this is one of the most memorable ones that it was pretty bad. Flying at night, going out down the coast of California. We were doing a training mission with a KC-135 from Southern California, and we went through a thunderstorm, and both airplanes started bouncing, and we were 10 feet from, actually less than 10 feet from the other jet. In those situations, we have a procedure that's called breakaway. So when somebody says breakaway, there are things that we need to do. As the receiver aircraft that we were, our job was to get away from the tanker aircrafts. So we executed our procedures, but it was so violent that the pilot that was sitting in front of me, he had his publications bag, kind of like a backpack or a suitcase, small suitcase, was actually floating in front of my face. That's how we dropped. We dropped about 1,500 feet in a matter of maybe 4 or 5 seconds. And then the tanker airplane, because the difference in pressure between us and them, they went up and then they dropped, and creating a tail whip. The boom operator in the back of the jet got injured, and our airplane was a mess. We had oxygen bottles everywhere. Everything came out of the brackets. Yeah, it was a pretty bad night, and I had a few of those also during the day, but that one I will never forget. And amongst all the ones, but I cannot talk about. So.
All right. Well, let's see. So, during service? What was things like? What was like food like? What, did you guys have plenty of supplies?
Oh yeah. The beauty of flying your own airplanes that you can bring whatever you want. Mm-hmm. So on the Air Mobility Command tanker KC-10 side, if we were to go into a place that had that we knew that is going to have shortages, we will bring our own stuff. But for the most part, where we go to, there are also already services in place for the crew members and the crews.
So you said you brought things. Did you bring anything special for good luck?
I used to carry a little picture of the Sacred Heart that my mom gave me. Yeah.
How many people would usually be in one of the aircrafts that you were flying?
I'm sorry, say again?
How many people would usually be in an aircraft that you were flying?
Well, it depends. It depends on the mission. For example, in my airplane, the basic crew is 4. It would be pilot, co-pilot, flight engineer, and a boom operator. During combat operations, there's only the 4 of us. Now, if we're going to go into a different country doing a cargo mission or doing a what we call a fighter drag, we may have more than 1 crew member per crew position just so we can fly longer. Because with only 4, we are restricted to a certain amount of time in the air and on the ground combined. So if we have more crew members, some can sleep while others can fly. But it depends on the flight time, the length of the mission, and what we're gonna do.
See, what was a time in the war where you felt particularly the most stress or pressure?
Probably at the beginning of Afghanistan. In Iraq, at the beginning of Iraq, we had a few things. Obviously, because at the beginning of every war, the air power has to get established and make sure that you're not gonna get shot at by any ground artillery or anything like that. So that's always the most stressful, because you have to do what you need to do to get the job done.
What was out of all your missions, which one was the longest?
Flight time wise?
Yeah.
I flew direct from here to Diego Garcia, 23 hours.
Yeah.
So did you have to be awake that entire time?
No,
Oh.
no. On that, like I said, on that missions like that, you have multiple crew members from the same crew position. So you have somebody sleeping while the other one's flying.
How did people during these missions? How did people entertain themselves?
Oh, back then we had magazines and iPods. We did not have any kind of no TVs, no nothing. Just reading and walking up and down the plane.
Mm-hmm. And when you were on leave, what would you normally be doing?
Oh, just regular vacation stuff. I'm an avid cyclist, so I will be riding my bike, mountain biking, trail running, stuff like that, skiing with the family.
So, what places did you travel in the service?
Well, so many. I travel all over Europe, Canada, a few places in Canada, Alaska, throughout the Pacific. I didn't get to go to the Caribbean, but I did go to South America a few times, and all over the United States.
Let's see. During your service, do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual event?
Oh, there's plenty, but I don't think I can talk about them.
Do you have any photographs of the war?
I do. I do have some. Back in the day, we didn't have phones with cameras, so but I managed towards the end of my career in the Air Force. I managed to take a few whenever I could.
What were they usually pictures of?
Places that I went, I've traveled to, operate some airplane shots, like formation airplanes, stuff like that.
Speaking of documenting, did you keep a personal diary?
You know what? I did not keep a personal diary, but at one point I thought about writing a book. And I was gonna call it Prisoners of Freedom. The reason I was gonna call it Prisoners of Freedom was because our base where most of the bases where American troops are look like a prison. But instead of, the prisons are to keep the prisoners from leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our camps are to keep the bad guys from coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But they are the same way. They got guard towers, concertina wire. You cannot leave unless you are going to do something. So, and I thought about writing that, but I never did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you recall the day that your service ended?
Waiting for my retirement?
Yes.
Oh, that was a year and so, like, almost a year and a half. No, a year, like 10 months ago. It was fine. I was at home. No, I had my retirement ceremony on 29 April of 2016. It was kind of like a bittersweet. Because I was happy because I was done with the service, and I was sad because I was gonna leave my friends in the airplane. But it was time for me to move on.
So how long in total were you in service then?
I was in service for 22 years and 3 months and some change. A few more, like 3 or 4 days or something like that.
So what did you do after your service ended?
I was at home for a couple months taking a break, and then I started working again at the Air Force Base as a civilian. So I'm a civil service employee, federal employee in one of the flying squadrons. Pretty much doing similar stuff that I was doing, minus the flying.
Let's see. Did you join a veterans organization?
I have not yet, actually. I've been approached by the BFW and some other ones, but I have not joined any veterans organizations yet.
So, did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
Yeah, I could just say this. Yeah, in a way. Yeah.
How did it do so?
Well, the there are reasons why we do what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do I agree with why we went to the places that I went to? 100%, maybe not. I reserve that to myself. But I, as a service member, you have to, you under oath, and you have to do what your superiors tell you to do, and carry on the orders of the officers appointed over you. So, whether you agree or disagree with what you're doing. Yes, there were times I did not agree with what was happening, but as a true patriot that I am, I followed the orders and I completed the mission as it was prescribed.
Mm.
So.
Do you attend reunions?
You know what? For us, I haven't attended like a formal reunion, but every time somebody retires from the KC-10 community here in the West Coast, it's kind of like a reunion because people come to see the other guys retiring, and then we get together and have fun times.
So, how did your service and experiences affect your life?
Specifically, your life after your service.
Right.
Okay. Well, it affects it greatly because of my service. I have the civilian job that I have. So even though I am not an active duty member of the Air Force, I'm still serving our country as a civilian employee of the Department of the Air Force. I continue to influence our young crew force, whether it's through airplane knowledge, personnel issues, helping people progress in their career. I continue to do that. I'm still a young veteran, kind of, so to speak, because I don't see myself like the typical VFW guy or gal that you see out on the street wearing the hat and stuff like that. I'm not. It's weird for me to see myself at that level, because to me, I'm here, they're up here, because they serve in a time where it was really, really, really hard to be a service member. I mean, I had hard times, but my hard times don't compare to their hard times. I have talked to many air crew members that flew during the World War II and other conflicts between my time and their time, and they lived a different life. It was a lot different. It made me appreciate what I had, and I tell that to my kids every day that I see them, that you guys have what you have because everybody that's been doing the job. That's pretty much. That's why you don't see me. When you see me out on the street, you will never know that I've done what I've done. But because I don't talk about that very often, unless somebody asks me. But something to think about when you guys are doing this project is to see what was before you guys, before your parents, before my time, because it wasn't easy. So like now, everybody has their cell phones and their electronics, and it's pretty easy to get to where you need to get to, and what, but it's different, and we adapted in times.
Huh?
Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
Not really. I just thank you for the opportunity to have me here. If you guys need any help with any other stuff, we're very happy to help you guys out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
For your service and your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Really appreciate it.
I didn't say do too much.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.